You are now listening
to the Black Male Educators Alliance podcast.
Lifting our voices.
Lifting our voices.
There we are.
Fellas.
How we doing?
How you guys feel, man? The boys are back in town.
Yeah, man.
Welcome everyone to the BMEA podcast, Lifting Our Voices. We are back for our first episode in April. I'm here with my co-hosts Brandon Lane and Chris Watson. Fellas, how you feel?
I'm feeling good. Historic day. The weather was actually good. If you've been in Cali, you may not be appreciating this mild spring day we had in Michigan, but me, I'm appreciating the sunshine I felt and saw. But now I'm feeling good, man. Brandon, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, fellas? I'm feeling good despite, the frigid air outside. Family's good. Good to see y'all boys, man, and excited just for the day as well, and just for the topic.
Yeah.
What up, Mike?
I'm good, man. We for most educators, we just came off a spring break, man. If you can just talk a little bit about how was your spring break, man? What you guys do?
Yeah, I can start that off. Y'all hear me still?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. Just working on some things behind the scenes, but had a great time. The family and I think I told the show we were going to DC, so we had a great time in DC. Kids had a good time. Wife had fun. We went to Howard University. Got a tour. That was really exciting for my oldest daughter, and also my wife. She enjoyed it a lot too. Went to the African American Museum out there. Ate good. Saw two of my best friends while we were there as well. So it was just overall a good time, man. And we survived traveling in the airport with 4 kids and all of that. Man, it ain't for the week, but we made it, and that was good.
You're a real hero, man. I couldn't imagine going through with 4 kids.
Yeah, man. That's
what about y'all? I'll get into.
How was yours, Lane?
Man, really well. Went well. Just similar to Chris, went to Philly to see my pops. Moms came with us, took care of business, a little bit of business at home, but for the most part, really a lot of quality time with my dad, man. We went down to the Franklin Institute, got the kids out early, pizza a couple of times, just a lot of family time. Got to see one of my good friends, like a brother, and then my sis out there, and then my wife's best friend is in Philly too. So we just, got to connect with family and friends, man. It was refreshing. And then right after that, I kind of, took a trip to Cali for work. And that was, good time, good vibes. Good time, good vibes. What about you, Mike?
Now we'll come back to the Cali trip, man. I had a really big trip planned for spring break, man. I've been planning it back for about a year or so. Me and some college friends of mine went to Brazil, and it was like the best trip ever. So I'm still going off the fumes of that happy place, man. But it was a great time, man. Beautiful city. Just food was crazy, man. It was a great time, man. So, and then going from there, I was in California with Brandon as well. So this is my first day back in Detroit and Michigan. So it's a little chillier than I would prefer it to be, but I understand that I gotta temper my expectations now a little bit.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, like that trip out there to San Diego? So we got some of the BMEA representative, also other black males doing their thing. Dr. Chris Emden, Dr. Sharif El-Mekki. Like, how was it at the conference?
Man, so it was dope, and I'll let Brandon add to it. But it's the ASU plus GSV summit, which is focused on ed tech. So we actually were able to take some of our principal wellness fellows, sponsor their trip to this summit as well. So we got to sit in on a few sessions around empathy. I know Brandon seen a session around empathy and anti-racist educators. I sat in on a few sessions focusing on ed tech in the future and where education is going. Really just kind of seeing what people are talking about, so that when our children aren't falling behind the curve. Because a lot of what I was hearing, I can already kind of get my wheels spinning on how we're kind of increasing the digital divide based upon who has the resources and who doesn't, and whose schools can afford to move in this direction and who isn't. But overall, it was a great conference. B, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll add, definitely. I sat in on the session that I went to. Really took a lot from them. Got the opportunity to sit in on the equity, diversity, and inclusion session facilitated by the Center for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Sister named by the name of Kimberly Smith and her team facilitated that session and kind of walked us through how they partner with school districts to build, your proficiency and your literacy around what equity really is and how you might take some really calculated steps to just foster equity in your school district, et cetera. So got some insights that I want to add to some of the work that we do. And then I did sit in on the what was it called? Anti-racist school community, something like that. It was a panel of brothers and sisters of color, and they kind of just talked about, what it really means to create a space for people of color to be in education and remain in education. And then Sharif El-Mekki and his team, they facilitated a few sessions, which were phenomenal around their work and their product and how they partner with districts as well to build cultural proficiency. And they just a wealth of knowledge there too. So a big networking event. Shout out to a principal who developed K-12 crypto. His name is Amin Ra. Man, basically, his platform is as students come to school and they, demonstrate evidence of their learning, they invest in crypto. And that when they graduate from school, they basically have a portfolio of various coins, specifically a coin that they developed at the school, my fault. And then they can convert it to the various coins that are, public, if you will, now. So great idea. Just people like that really thinking and pushing the envelope to do great things for the kids, man. It was pretty dope.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Brother El-Mekki, he was on our last episode when we had a Michigan Reading Association conference back in March with these wonderful panel you see here in front of you. So if you haven't been able to catch that episode, go to YouTube, subscribe to our
Yes,
page,
sir.
make sure that you
Yes, sir.
get the latest updates on when our podcast is dropping. But definitely watch that episode. Really dope conversation. We definitely want to have those speakers on again. And yeah, Brother El-Mekki was on the show, and he was speaking, and there was a lot of great dope brothers at this conference. We gotta make sure we get Brother Ra on the show in the future to talk more about his K-12 crypto. And there were some other guys I met who were doing really great things at their schools. But speaking of that, we can talk a little bit about what's new with BMEA. Brandon, you want to talk a little bit about what we got going on so far?
Well, I mean, just with the fellowships, we're moving into session number 8. We'll be focusing on our part 2 of really develop project-based learning experiences with the critical consciousness framework. And we'll actually have a guest on from the fellowship tonight. And continuing with the Principal Wellness PLC as well. We're going to get together with the brothers in the fellowship, and we'll continue our part 2 really around restorative practices, racial healing, and engaging in like really courageous conversations to really produce equitable outcomes in your school district. So excited about that. Continuing our partnership with one of our local schools who's been facilitating some of our project-based learning curriculum that's been going really well. They are in day 7, and this day was focused around really synthesizing their learning after their quantitative and qualitative analysis to really begin to work on their cumulative products that demonstrate evidence of their learning over time. So some really good things happening. If I left something out, I just threw the hoop for you, Mike. You can dunk it.
Yeah. I was going to just ask if a school is interested in like partnering with BMEA or organization, like what's the best way to get in contact?
Yeah, man, they can hit me up on LinkedIn. Obviously, our website. I'll just drop just the communication in the chat, and they can find us there. My email, Mike's email, but I'll be sure to provide the information. Brandon at BMEA of Michigan. .org, Payne at BMEA of Michigan.org. Drop those things in the chat. you can directly contact us, and we would love to talk a little more about what your district or your school is interested in, how we can support your team.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I guess that's a good segue talking about the early career fellowship. To bring on our first guest, our host today, since we Jerry couldn't be with us today. You know, our brother in arms, he's still enjoying the weather in California, so we're gonna hold it down for him. But we do have a special guest that's going to stand in his place, and that's our ECTF fellow, Deija Collier. Welcome her to the show.
Woo. What's up, Dave?
Hey y'all.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
How you doing?
I'm good. I can't complain.
So for the audience, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into education.
So I'm Deja, or I go by Dej. I got into education. I think I was in high school, and my basketball coach actually made us go volunteer. Well, she didn't make us, but she had us go volunteer at like the neighboring elementary schools, and she I ended up getting. I was supposed to get a first grade classroom, but I ended up getting a special education classroom, and I was supposed to be reading to them, but instead, like, I ended up playing with them, and like it just really opened my heart and like warmed me. Like, I was like, man, I don't. This is something that I really feel like I need to be doing, because I thought I was going to I thought I was really going to be a forensic scientist. And then my mom was like, well, you don't really like blood. So I don't think that you should do that. And I was like, you're right. You're right. So that really like sparked my heart and made me become a little bit more open to my options. And then I took a tour at Eastern, and then boom, I was there taking classes, diving deep into my major and things like that.
Dope. So I know you're part of the early career teacher fellows. What's that experience been like for you? You know, early in your career, like how's it helped you? Maybe like how did you feel like you maybe grown as a result of being in the program?
I feel like it has actually helped me connect with my students a little bit more. Even just like learning the different I want to say like topics like the critical race theory, just is really putting things into perspective, and things that I probably did not learn while I was in college is bringing it more to surface, and more being able to relate to my kids and understanding like my students of color a little bit more. Like being a teacher of color is different, but like connecting with your students, man, like learning how to just pinpoint what they need and try to figure out what they need is, it has really like opened my eyes to a lot of things.
Absolutely. And you know, we didn't get a chance to celebrate on the show, you know, Women's History Month, but you know, just in honor of our new Supreme Court Justice, Ketanji Brown, we wanted you to just talk a little bit about like maybe who inspires you as an educator, as you know, a woman educator, or even just a woman hero that kind of inspires you to do the work that we do.
Um, I mean, hands down, I'm gonna have to say my mom, because like that's just like the first role model that like I had like shown or how like to be a woman, to carry myself, and how to like interact with kids. Like my mom has always worked with kids, so just learning those steps and learning how to build relationships, like that lady can talk to anybody and literally put anybody on the map. Like, so I just have to say my mom, hands down. Another person that I want to say is my principal right now. My principal wears so many hats. And like, I often find myself asking her, I'm like, how do you do this? How do you talk to everybody, like parents, grandparents, kids, administrative staff? Like, how do you just wear all these many different hats and still hold your composure? So just shout out to both of them. They really they really teach me a lot, or show me a lot of things that I never felt like I needed to see.
That's good. That's good, man. Shouts out to them. Shouts out to all the moms. I know my mom inspires me too.
Yeah.
Definitely helps out. So absolutely. So you guys ready to get into the topics?
Let's get into it. You know, I was looking at the list. We're keeping it real educational, but it's been a lot that happened in the world.
Yeah.
But let's jump into the first one. I think this one, if you've been, I think this really started toward the end of Trump's presidency. it like started to pick up steam, and it's really like the main topic of this episode when we talk about this anti-CRT movement that we've seen across states. Well, we want to first of all, have a center of conversation around this, but I don't know if you all saw this, but Florida's Stop Woke Act. And when I saw it, I said, wait a minute, that's the real name of the, they normally try to find something catchy, and I guess they did in this case in Florida. Passed the Senate, and it was heading to the governor's desk to be signed. And what it does, I was reading up on this, not only does it ban like critical race theory in public schools, also it actually, I'm actually going to take this off the screen for a second. Something I think is really dangerous because some, teachers may feel like, I'm going to teach it anyway, or I'm going to still mix it in. But it's actually a provision that they changed in the, actually I have it pulled up here, basically in the laws that which an employee can actually sue their employer if they are, allowing certain speech to be had. So it's like it removed a lot of protection from employees as well. So I think that's another thing that's really kind of dangerous about this law, because even if you have educators who may want to be rebellious or just kind of still get their point across and teach true history of, people of color, marginalized people in history, now there's an extra layer and dynamic to it where, you doing that could make the school liable or even in the workplace, the employer or the business. So it's just real strategic and very concerning. But I just kick it off with that. I mean, we've seen this happening. We did some research. There's been 41 states that have introduced or enacted similar, and it's only 50 states, so that's a large majority. So I'm just curious, like, what's your thoughts? Brandon, you want to start us off? You got to unmute, Brandon.
Man, if I had a dollar for every time, man, I'd be rich. Cause no, so for real, what comes to mind first is, I think there's a lot of ambiguity around like saying, we're going to censor what people say about racism, about race, about sexism, things of that nature, because I guess what is the degree? What is the line? Where is it where I can say this and I can't say that? You know what I'm saying? So it's super subjective. So that means if one of my colleagues doesn't like what I have to say, you know what I'm saying? And it could be very mild, you know what I'm saying? Something super benign. Slavery existed. Like if I just stop right there, oh, what are you saying? You know what I'm saying? Like now I'm in trouble. Now I might have to, suffer some type of financial loss because of this particular law. And I think it's very strategic. I've heard some arguments around, it's anti-American. It teaches children to hate, things of that nature, and we don't want our children to be uncomfortable. But I think that's the wrong mindset to have, and it could just be because I am black. You know what I'm saying, and I have a different perspective. But I did, do a little bit of research. Just there was a couple who did. They kind of went through a series of activities and spoke to like 4 people around diversity, equity, inclusion, what critical race theory actually is, implicit bias, just some of the derivatives of CRT, if you will. And they came out with a changed attitude. They were against teaching critical race theory in schools, which is not really taught technically in K-12 schools. Some private schools might have it, right, but it's not technically taught in K-12 schools. And they came out and their minds were changed. This is a white couple. The husband said it wasn't, but I think you can see in his disposition it was. The wife she basically said, "My mindset is different." And some of the research suggests that when you expose children to the realities of what actually took place, they actually develop a stronger moral compass. You understand what I'm saying? The kids aren't dumb. They're not going to come out of this thinking, "Oh, I hate you for that." And not to say someone won't take advantage of it, but I know I'm talking a lot, man. I do have a lot of thoughts about it. Deij, what you want, Mike, or Deij, if you got some thoughts, I'm gonna throw it to you next.
I kind of gotta agree with you, like with the whole moral compass thing. Like kids aren't gonna come out of this like you said, like, oh, I hate you or I dislike you or things like that. Like, I feel like it's kind of just putting things back where we just built from. Like we just built, um, like we literally are climbing out of a hole of like taking skeletons out of the closet, and I just feel like it's just going right back to it, like just instantly, like you got to watch what you say, no freedom of speech, like things like that. I just kind of don't think it's a fair type of law. It's really strategic though, like it's really it's really like I gotta sit here and watch what I say, but then you can't really calculate like, is this gonna offend my coworker or is this gonna offend someone? So it's just it's kind of hard. I don't know. This is new. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. So first, I wholeheartedly believe it's 100% political. I don't think anyone did any research. Even those who even passed those laws or even wrote those bills have done any like research or reading or understand critical race theory. I think it was a hot button topic for a moment. I think that like some of the things that were circulating around critical race theory that are basically just the truth about how America operates and just like institutional racism and systemic racism in the U.S. I think that really is what caught people's attention, and then they started running with it. Because I know some of the language in the laws are like you can't say that the government is inherently racist or sexist. Now that's crazy thing to even put in law because that's definitely like freedom of speech, right? And there are key phrases and words about like, and what they've also included. This happens in all bills. They throw things in there that are like fine print. Like you also can't talk about LGBTQ communities in elementary schools, or you can't talk about like genders different there being more than one gender. So you look at the laws from state to state because they do vary from bit to bit, but they're all under this CRT umbrella of, oh, we're not teaching kids to hate white people or white people to hate their own history, or being divisive or whatever the case may be. So they're trying to put this law into place, which I honestly don't think that is. I think 90% of it won't be what's the word, monitored or you know what I mean, like held accountable. I don't think they're really going to like do have that stuff. I think it more of it is just like feeding into their base and keeping their base like alive and well in the post-Trump era, you know.
I was going to say something similar because I think it's a few things, and also like I want to shout out to my man Christian. I was just about to say something about Christian. He just put something in the chat. He said, "I'm gonna put it up here so everyone can see." He said, "We can say that it's a classes though, and generally who benefits and who does not benefit." Yep, I feel you. And also for the shirts, Christian, you can check it out on our website. He asked about that, BMEA Michigan.org, or just contact one of us and we can get you squared away. But one thing that there's a couple of thoughts that come to mind, and Mike, you just kind of hit on one of them that I was going to say, is that I think this is also kind of like a whistle. You know what I mean? It's a signal. It's to really, I think, keep people's emotions high, or to keep trying to keep control, to also seize the opportunity. And it also reminds me just why it's important that we vote in like midterm elections, because a lot, just how laws are passed, they are introduced in like House of Chambers, or before they become law, there's a body of people, and you can have a Democratic president, but we see like if you don't have control at the different levels, people who support this agenda can introduce these laws that then it becomes hard to untangle it, even if people are voted in power. So it's just a reminder why it's important that we do rally and show up to all elections to make sure that the people that are in these powers do represent our interests. When I say our, I mean a diverse set of interests. I don't think these people are. But another thing I do want to hit on, I actually know some people who teach in Texas. I am wondering like what's this like on the ground level? I think where we're at, it's not a big concern for us right now. And I don't know if Michigan's I think it was something introduced, but I don't think it's really taken a progressive going into law just yet or anything like that. But like working in a city like Detroit, is this something we need to be concerned about? I tend to think not at this point, but if you are working in certain cities in Florida or in Texas, I wonder if you're working at a school and you a person of color and you really stand up for culturally responsive teaching and teaching history, I wonder, do you feel the pressure to like, oh man, let me double check what I say, or our teachers now feeling more handicapped to teach from a certain script? our textbooks being, expunged and looked at. I don't know. That's some things I want to explore more, because I think those, if we see that, then I think we can know like whether or not it's truly being, monitored or implemented, or is it just something that they're using, as a smoke screen to keep people, energized.
And too, I think it's to scare, Black and brown educators away, and also scare away, activist educators and those, white folks who might be, pro teaching the true history of this country, right? I think that they're like, to Brandon's point, he mentioned a little bit in the chat, like this came basically after the January 6th attack. But, and I'll let him speak more to that, but I think that with the 1619 project and how much steam it was getting, and how much, the internet is exposing so many lies in in Americans' history, and what we learn in high school or in schools, and how that's not the actual truth. I think we are, as a world, moving to a place where the truth is obviously more easier access, right? Beforehand, we were in school in the 90s or whatever the case, well, however old y'all are. But I didn't want to put Deja in that category. We might be old over here, but
She looked like 90s.
Like 90s.
I was definitely in school in like 2010, 2000, not in the 90s.
Okay, all right, yeah. So us old folk, back in the 90s, we all got our textbooks from Texas, because Texas produced all these textbooks. A lot of our, those came from the South, and the South dictating what we got in our public school education. You're starting to see now how much of it they are whitewashing or, watering down, and how white educators' voices or white political voices have way more power than Black parents and Black educators, right? Because you think about these laws and how they're trying to protect the, white parents don't want their kids exposed to learning racism early on, but like, what about the Black children and their parents, and what do they want, right? They don't really have a voice in that. And I think that it is a way to scare people away from education really taking this turn, well, not turn, but really like taking this deep dive into the truth, which is going to be great. I mean, it's what BMEA stands for, but I think this is like a reaction to basically a more of a revealing of America's true history.
Yeah. If I could add real quick, it just seems like just some of the stuff I was listening to, with the January 6th attack on the Capitol, with a lot of the peaceful protests with the Black Lives Matter movement, it was just that. It wasn't anything violent to come out of it. But then when this happened, with Black Lives Matter, people were said to be, attackers. I don't know, just some of those really antagonistic words that were used. But then, when the Capitol rioters, they went out there, it was like, oh, they're just peaceful protesters. No, it was nothing like that. And I think it was just a clear distinction between how you treat Black people when they are out in the streets trying to peacefully protest versus really white people or one side of the political spectrum. And that was just super clear. So I think it was really clear in some ways that one side might have been losing some steam. And then here we come with this CRT. Oh, we got to find something to actually, really gain some momentum with. And then boom, here it is. They're politicizing this word. And then each time you talk about it, people are going crazy. And then, just that idea around textbooks, it's crazy because you can Google search it right now just to see the difference between what's in textbooks just across the country, California, Texas, up north here. And, our legislators, they are our voice, quote unquote. So those people decide what is in the textbooks based on, it's subjective, based on what they feel. There aren't standards for what goes into textbooks, right? States decide. So, we talk about specific things when it comes to slavery. I mean, you can just say slavery took place this long. You don't really have to say anything specific. You can be extremely evasive, and you can almost talk about some of these things in a colorful way, if you will, as if it wasn't as brutal or as harsh as it was. And it's just crazy. It's just crazy, man. Sometimes it's super audacious to me.
I mean, and I'll say this, and I don't know if we want to move on after this, but like, here's the thing that's kind of funny about it. I think people and teachers, if you were uncomfortable with it, or if you had the view that like, oh yeah, well, slavery was a long time ago. Why are we still talking about it? Like, you probably didn't even need this law, you know what I mean, to change your behavior, because you probably wasn't trying to touch on anyone. And I'm not just trying to say it was only white teachers, but I'm just saying in general. So I think it really is just an attack on educators that did see the value in that. They saw the value in, like, teaching the history. And like you said, Brandon, I think devoid of that, you miss opportunity for a student to, gain better empathy, better moral compass. But I think for those who are already maybe like, nah, I'm not feeling that, or one, like you said, want to kind of gloss it over, or don't know history themselves, this just made their lives even easier just to continue what they've been doing, And you think about how many of our, you think about just the makeup of educators, right, in this country, the majority being white women. You think about the makeup of this country. Like, I wonder how much is really even going to change. You feel what I'm saying? Like, I don't think in urban cities, I don't think, we're going to stop, not yet, at least, you know what I'm saying, if ever. So I think in some of those communities where people may have been a little bit like, they probably weren't looking up 1619 project to begin with, but now this law, it creates this energy around it that now people outside of education are like, oh, what? Like that? Yeah, of course not. Don't do that. So it is interesting to see how it kind of progresses. But I definitely want to explore getting some teachers from some of these states where we know this is a more contested subject just due to the, diversity in the area. I want to get some of their perspective on this.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea, because as I think about this, and I'm gonna pass it to Deija in a second. As I think about this, back to what I was saying earlier, like, how is this impacting not only our educators of color, but our students of color, and like what they get access to reading, right? And like, we all know reading, especially early on, reading books with people who represent us, right, or historical things that like talk about where we come from and who we are, is important for Black education, or education of Black children, Black and brown children. And so, like, is this law going to further feed these schools that are already not putting enough, Black voices in front of our kids? And so we, at the Michigan Reading Conference, we were talking about literacy rates for Black and brown children and how they're like what needs to be done in order to improve that. And this law is not helping that at all, much less helping people who are thinking about education wanting to go. So if I'm a Black educator in Texas or Mississippi, do I even want to even chance losing my job or going into education if I got to deal with this hostile work environment, right, just from the state? It's crazy. Deija, go. I'm passing it to you so you can say the final word here.
I'm really just gonna touch on it from like the kids' perspective. Just being a social studies teacher and just having to sit there and realize like how many of the students are not aware of the things that happened in the past. I taught many of lessons where like I had touched on slavery, civil rights movement, and the main questions that I got is why? Why did they do that? Why was this a thing? Like, and it does change them morally, because the questions that they're asking themselves is like, do I act like that? Have I acted like that towards somebody? Or why has that person acted like that towards somebody? It does, for me, it's taking away their kind of like livelihood in a sense, like, or like even their freedom of speech. Like, it really just, it baffles me, because like I said, most of the kids are asking why, and I have to sit there and explain, like, I can't even tell you why they would even do that, or I can't even tell you why history was the way it was. Or like, I'll even teach them about French and Indian War. They're sitting there like, so they couldn't have just talked it out, they just had to have a war. It's just the different things that kids are just trying to wrap around and understand, and why history is the way it is, pretty much.
Yeah, facts. So, hopefully, our brothers and sisters teaching the history, and to Brandon's point, I know we move on. Brandon's point, I do think we need historical standards for what we teach in schools, right? We have math and English standards and standardized testing for that, but I think the sciences and the history can be taught too, because those are both factual. They're both factual things that can be, taught in those classes, and should be. And I think that can help change what we're dealing with now, right? The fact from the fiction.
Hey,
yeah,
make sure the right person is creating those standards, though. It's a slippery slope.
Its slope is already slippery now, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think the standards would at least kind of put, well, because you, to your point, absolutely. But I think the standards would then push back against, like, all right, what's already being taught, and is that even true? Like, can you back that up? So but that, we'd have to continue to fight that battle. Our last topic of the day today, Deja, is wellness. So we just came up a spring break. I'm feeling rested and well and happy and gleeful, and hopefully, most of our educators were able to take that spring break for some rest. But this year has been tough, and the past few years have been tough. And I know that part of the teacher shortage is from people leaving because they're not, for a myriad of reasons, but not just feeling well and healthy in this space. And so the question we're posing to everyone is, what are some things that can be done to increase teacher health and wellness, from the school perspective, from the state, whatever, personally what teachers can do, but also like what should be schools and districts and states be doing to help improve teacher health and wellness from the educator's perspective.
I can. We about to go, Deji, or want me to kick it off?
You can go ahead, and I'll piggyback.
I mean, I don't have all the answers, so trust me. You be ready, because I don't have a solution. But I also think we just have to situate this in the context of like a pipeline issue with teachers, right? Where the enrollments in teacher prep programs are lower. So it's almost like people who are in education are getting burnt out, and also there's not the same amount of interest in entering into the profession. So when we talk about health and wellness, I know we've talked about this a number of times. I think it's so relevant though, because it's a battle, and there, from COVID, there's other jobs that are paying comparable wages to teacher salaries that don't require some of the demands that it takes to be an effective teacher. So I think the question kind of comes with like, how do we ensure quality of like instruction and delivery for students, but maybe rethink like the required, like lessen the load of teachers. And I don't know the solution, how you find that balance necessarily. But I think that's one thing that I've heard educators, complain about. It's like, and it's tough. I'm not exactly sure. So I just think that's some contextual things, because I think about like, oh man, wellness again. But I'm like, man, this is real, because as an education profession, we're not getting better. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was exhausted before this show. I told Brandon, I'm like, man, I was like almost thinking, like, I don't know. Man, luckily my wife made me like a smoothie in the BLT, and I was straight. But but that's real. Like, people deal with that kind of stuff, and they like, yo, I can't go to work. You know what I'm saying? I mean, at least I'm doing it for like a podcast, but people feel like that waking up in the morning sometimes. I can't do these lessons. I can't grade these papers. I can't deal with this. I can't do, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know, but I just think that's some content I want to add. So Deja, you're the freshest out the bunch. So maybe you seeing some things that as older guys we just kind of not seeing. What you think?
Well, I was burnt out week 2. I was like, this is too much. But to be honest, I'm just gonna say it off the bat. For me, and for some of my fellow teachers, it's the pay, and that's just truthful. Like you say, you can look at another job and it can have the same salary as a teacher salary, but it has less demands, less deadlines, less hats that gotta wear. Because as teachers, we wear all the hats. I'm a nurse, I'm a psychologist, I'm a parent to some of the kids. Like, you wear less. I mean, you'll wear less hats at these other jobs. So for me, it's the pay. I mean, I work as my first year. I worked 2 jobs just to get by. And I feel like sometimes, you shouldn't have to do that. I mean, I like money for granted, so it just kind of makes it worse for me. Another thing is, I feel like they should provide more mental health days, and like show teachers what exactly a mental health day requires, like shutting off your phone, um, putting your emails on like the automatic replies. Like, after 5 o'clock, my email is done. I do not enter email. I don't look at my phone. I don't want to look at nothing that has to do with school. until 8 a.m. the next morning. So just trying to teach teachers how to shut it off. Nobody taught me that my first week of school. I was in school probably till about 8 a.m. to 11 o'clock. I was making lesson plans, getting my classroom ready. I didn't have a cutoff time. I was still answering emails. So just properly teaching us how to shut it down, giving us those mental health days instead of like sick days. Like just maybe once a week, once a month, we can take a day off and, gather ourselves, have nothing to do with work. Um, Maybe even creating some more incentives and like honoring teachers a little bit more. Um, I don't know what other schools do, but I know my school, my principal is trying to get really good at honoring us in any way that she can, whether it's putting it in the mailer, giving out like we have these things called like um, I can't think of the name of them, but we get cards from other teachers that honor us during our staff meetings, just making us feel a little bit loved, or like we'll randomly get lunch or dinner or breakfast at any amount of time. So just making sure that you're having that healthy balance, because some teachers go, times without eating because they're so stressed out. So providing that meal that they're missing will better help them to be like, okay, now I don't got to worry about eating because the food's right here in front of me. Things like that.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Deja, I've always, I think the bare minimum is the salary, right? Like increasing teacher salary. Like at this point, you see that there is a demand for teachers and there is no supply. So if this country is so big on economics, you would think that it would work itself out in where teacher salaries would be increasing. But just historically, we've just treated teachers, the country is treating teachers as disposable. Um, but I think a creative way to also support teachers and make and to incentivize them is not about how much you pay us, but what we have to pay for, right? And so, if like let's say you say, oh, we don't, the state doesn't want to bring more taxes in, or the country don't bring more taxes in to pay teachers more money, which they have plenty of money, they just waste it. Um, then let's teachers get the same type of like benefits that the military get, right? Or move me to the front of the airplane, you know what I'm saying? Or let me get half off on the house, or let me get Chick-fil-A for free once a week. You know what I'm saying? Or like there are things that we ain't got to pay for that benefit, to us. Like we get 10 mental health days, paid mental health days we can take off, and whatever the case may be, on top of our, our sick and maternity leave and things like that. Like the profession can be more of a welcoming space where it's like, yeah, they don't pay us a lot, but we are honored, right? And we got incentives and we get benefits here and there. You know what I mean? Um, I know back in Maryland, like if you taught in the Baltimore City, you can get half off on a loan of a house. In certain counties they do that. Or like you said, free food and stuff like that. Like if you incentivize that, forgive all our loans, like private, public, let them loans go. Like there would be a immediate uptick in teachers because people need
Yeah,
those
really.
loans forgiven. They need
Yeah.
those loans forgiven, but they also, there are people who would want to teach, but are being held back from the fact that it is such a seemingly stressful job, and the pay is low. But like I said, it's not necessarily about how much you make, but it's how much you got to spend. And so if they can figure out ways to do that, I mean, give us a little bit more than they give the military, then I think you would solve the problem a lot sooner.
Yeah, they can't even give me a gas card. I'll be okay at
That's
this
hard.
point. Give me a
Well,
gas
I'm saying? Like a
card.
little bit.
If I could say, I love everything you're talking about, Mike. Really around, I guess you call them incentives, but really ensuring that you show love by, I guess, offering the incentives around loans, moving, transitioning, and things like that. So I think that's really dope. I do think around wellness, though, again, back to your point, Deja, around the wellness literacy, when you come into schools, I think it starts with the top down. Like our leaders have to be educated around what wellness looks like for themselves. They wear multiple hats as well. You know what I'm saying? So really, um, I guess if district leaders at the state level, like, we're talking about this whole thing around mental health. And even, Governor Whitmer is passing that bill to have more mental health workers in schools and things like that. I think it would be really helpful. If even the kids had mental health days, and I mean, it could be a day where we come to school and it could be a community building day, it could be a relationship building day, it could be a day where it's more about cultivating, I guess, wellness rather than trying to complete an assignment or something along those lines. And really quickly, our principals got to visit schools at the summit. And one of the schools in particular, they start at 8 a.m. and they finish at 2 o'clock. So they spend less hours instructionally than we do here, but they're experiencing better outcomes. Their teachers are happy. Their students are happy. Parents are happy with the outcomes that they're getting with their children in the classroom. So we got to figure out what they're doing well and try to imitate that. But what our principals were saying is that their superintendent decided, yeah, um, standardized tests are real, and we are, committed to, improving our outcomes. But we're actually going to focus on providing the highest quality instruction that we can for our students, and then the not stress free, but the environment for our teachers where they are developed, where they're not just filling out lesson plans for compliance, like they're working on producing a quality learning environment holistically. So just throwing that out there.
That's good. That's good. I mean, I was going to mention something I read about in the news, and also have a colleague who's doing something similar where they are trying to revamp, like with the teacher lounges, like creating some spaces within the school where teachers can have fun, they can relax. There was a principal, or I'm not sure if he's the principal, but educator at Davis Aerospace in Detroit. Like they're putting like massage chairs in the lounge, waterfalls, and different things like that. Also have a colleague, Melissa Lloyd, who's the principal of UPA Middle. She, I just heard her talking about they're like getting like a game room type vibe in a space where it's like you can come there and just have some fun. And I think that's another thing too. When you look at some of the like the a lot of those like tech type companies, they have those kind of things where you can disconnect from the work and like find joy doing something else. I think that's another thing. It won't solve the problem completely, but it can just make it enjoyable. I think it'd be cool. You set up the PlayStation 5, the Xbox, ping pong table, whatever, and it's like it doesn't have to be this stressful place all the time. And I think we have to make it okay for educators to feel like they can just not be just thinking about outcomes all the time. I think there's just a lot of pressure in schools. We're so data focused. We don't really measure like joy and just enjoyment. And that's something else I think why people are just kind of burnt out.
Yeah, there's no fun. There's no fun in the building. You got a building full of kids, ain't no fun. That's crazy. A building full of kids ain't no fun. And it isn't like the fun is impacting the data, because I've seen buildings where ain't no fun, the data's still trash. So it's like, what is there? What do you have to lose? You know what I'm saying? The only way is up. Like if you know what I'm saying? Like there are studies that show that people who are happier where they work have better outcomes, better output. That's and that's common sense, but that's simple that their data to support that. It's just we have to be able to start like thinking. I think the educational industry is one of the least thinking out of the box places to work in, and people are just afraid of like moving outside of this rigid, like super strict way of thinking. And then also give us Fridays off, and that's the last thing I'm gonna say.
Well, I just want to add a comment to that, Mike, because the thing about fun and enjoyment, I've been really trying to lean into this. So I have a teenager, 8th grade. I have my second oldest is in 2nd grade. I feel like there's at some point in the kids' educational journey, they stop like enjoying every day. You know what I'm saying? And like my son, like he loves school every day. I'm like, and I said, "Do you ever not like school?" He's like, "Nah, every day is good." So it's like I love that, but I remember when my daughter was like that too. But at some point, it becomes like, yeah, this day was fun, but like, every day is not fun. It's like I'm just going through the motion. And I think like we have to pay attention to like, and it can happen for different kids at different ages, obviously, but it's like, at what point does school stop being fun for kids? At some point it happens, and I think that's a point that we need to also pay attention to as well. Do we talk about like joy in school spaces?
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I'm gonna come back to this and go back to what Mike was saying, like the enjoying your workspace aspect. Like I know a couple people that work in Quicken Loans and they got a gym in Quicken Loans. They have like a Kahoot Friday where like you win like certain type of incentives or like they're able to get like free concert tickets if they put in a bid, just different type of things. Like man, that make me want to come to work every day. Like I can just put in a big and I can get a free concert ticket to go see whoever I want to go see. Like man, that's cool. Or like they get like the free drive-in tickets. Just it's just different things that will make me want to show up to work. Or just even the spaces like my teacher lounge, yeah, kind of boring, but they're putting in ways to make it fun. Like they just put in like these little bags where we all fill out our names, and it's like you leave something for that teacher. And like I had Hershey Kisses in there one day, and that just made my day. Just little things that's making it feel like it's a joy to come to work. If I show up every day and I'm just like, oh man, I'm here at this place again, then the kids gonna feel it like, oh man, she here at this place again, and I'm here too with her. Like, so they really feed off your energy. So I even had to change like the way I came into school too. Like one of my kids was like, man, you'll make it joyful to come in here, and I'm like, well, I'm not a morning person, but now I walk every time I see him, I'm screaming his ear like, good morning, how's your day going? Like he was like, okay, now I feel like you're doing too much. It's like, well, you told me I was a little dry, so now I gotta make it better. Just finding fun ways for everybody is really good. Like I even got a kid that come in, and I promise y'all I don't even be awake. He's like, good morning, and he's like running up and down the hallway. I'm like, why are you so excited? But great to have you here. Didn't even have coffee yet, but it's just trying to make it fun, and it'll be more beneficial for everybody.
Yeah. And I'm gonna kick it over to Brandon for the last word, but something related to this whole topic. I was watching a Dame Dash interview, and he made a comment. He said it's not by accident that jails, schools, and hospitals are all structured similarly. And he was saying like they're not like they're designed to like keep you feeling like boxed in and things like that. So just I think when we think about mental health of teachers, we gotta really like think big on like just really flipping the whole model. You know what I mean? Like we don't just like do we gotta have a long hallway with these little rooms? Could it just be like more open spaces? Could it be like how do we really rethink the space? Um, that's all I got. Brandon, I know you've been over there, man. Let us know.
Nah, nothing too deep. Appreciate everything that's been shared. I think this is kind of utopian like, but I'll say first, the borrower is slave to the lender. Um, and I think when we take the state's money, then we have to follow their rules. You know what I'm saying? We have to do certain things. We have to align to certain expectations. Mike and I, we've been talking about what is it called, the education of blacks in the South from like 1860 to 19 something, and you read some of those stories in there and they highlight how the community, black people coming out of slavery, having nothing, came together and literally put their last dimes into these buckets to build schools with their bare hands for their own kids. And we don't have that. So I've been thinking about what would it take for us to really foster and engender this sense of community and relational obligation where, you know what I'm saying, we feel in such a way that we're going to do whatever it takes to financially do what we need to do for our kids so that, we don't necessarily have to take all the state's money or whatever you want to call it to really establish schools that foster a sense of purpose that I guess, you know, fan the flame of curiosity. Because I think at a certain point, we stop talking about curiosity. We stop talking about, what kids love, animals, dinosaurs, all those kinds of things. And they lose a sense of, I guess, the joy factor. And then when they get older, they start thinking about what will this do for my life? I mean, I'm just like, hey, complete this worksheet. And what will this do for my life? And they lose a sense of interest and engagement. So that's all I have to say. I love y'all for it. Mike, what's up, my brother? Land the plane for us.
Hey man, I mean, I think everyone has good points. That's why we need to be high up at the top, making these decisions. Um, I want to thank our guest, Deija Collier, for joining us today. We'll see you soon in the fellowship session. But we hope you have a good weekend. I appreciate you for coming out. Guys, it's been a great show. Talked about a lot. Do we have any last words you want to say? I know we got the next podcast on the 21st of April, so make sure everyone tunes in. 2 weeks from now, we'll be back on the 21st. Any last words before we go?
So look, Christian, I guess we just reading each other's minds. And they said, when can I come on? So I think we were just chatting privately. We're going to try to get you on the next episode, Christian. So we're going to be in contact, man.
Yeah, Christian, have your people talk to his people, man. We're going to get you on.
We're going to find out what your booking fee is and all that.
Yeah.
So we going to reach out. And look at Curry said, let this man know. I'm going to show y'all the chat. I said, listen, I ain't going to say the joke I said about Jerry, but I said, no, we're going to get Christian on. I said he's loyal. He here every 2 weeks. Even when we miss weeks. I said he got better attendance than Jerry. They're called the joke, y'all. I said he got better attendance than Jerry. So no, we're gonna get you on, man. We want to hear you. I know you got a lot of fire, man. Do the award winner educator. So we're gonna bring you on. It's gonna be a good time. And I think that's it. But definitely want to thank you, Deija, for joining. Thank you for being part of the fellowship. And stick to it. It's gonna pay off in ways you can't even imagine.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Brandon, any last words before we head out?
None. Love y'all. Peace and blessings. I'm excited to see y'all in a couple of weeks. Let's make it happen.
All right, everybody. We'll see y'all next time on the BMEA podcast. We out.
Hey.
You are now listening
to the Black Male Educators Alliance podcast.
Lifting our voices.
Lifting our voices.